Okay, so at this point we have our server set up, all the server software installed. We have WordPress downloaded, as you can see right here. And we've also set up MySQL with a new WordPress user and a new database. So the next thing we need to do is set up Apache to handle all of this. So first things first, on this particular version, if we go in on my server here, if we go into our sites available, and you should remember this from our virtual host lectures, I have a couple of sites already set up. So you can see here I have ciardo.net and sub1.ciardo.net. So let's go ahead and set this up at ciardo.net. Now, if you have a fresh server here, you can go ahead and use the default, and you can use your IP address. You'll need to use that IP address as your site name, though, and you'll see what I mean by that in a sec. But you can set this up at your IP address if you wish. If you want to set it up as a virtual host, you can do that too. In fact, I think in the assignment below, you'll have to set it up as its own virtual host. So I will show you that here. So let's go into ciardo.net. And we have a couple things we need to modify. So server name, that's fine there. We can leave that. Our document root has changed. It's no longer at the var www. In this case, now it's at root WordPress. And generally, we'd want to set up a user for this. Just to get the site going, we're going to do it as root. And then we'll come back later and lock this server down more than it currently is. So again, here we need to go root WordPress. And that should be all we need to do. So once you've made those changes, go ahead and save it. If you're setting up a new virtual host, you'll need to make sure that the server name matches your particular virtual host and that all the other information is correct. So let's go ahead and save that. I also just want to verify, yes, root WordPress is the proper home directory. So the next thing we need to do is restart Apache so these changes take effect. So service Apache 2 restart. There we go. Okay. So now we should be able to go to ciardo.net and hopefully something will happen. Okay. So perfect. We know it's working because we're getting a WordPress error, and that wouldn't work if that wasn't set up properly. So this is a good sign. This means that our virtual host is set up correctly. We have all the right software installed on our machine, and we have kind of pointed things in the right direction. Now, this also means that our DNS is set up properly. So you'll have to refer to the DNS and virtual host lectures to make sure you have all that stuff going as it should be. So at this point, we can create a configuration file. And what this is going to do is this is going to walk us through the WordPress setup. Now, WordPress in the background is going to be modifying some things on our server, and we'll go through that as we start. So let's click Let's Go. And database name, you'll remember we set that to WordPress, so we can leave that. Our username here is also WordPress. Our password is super secret. If I could spell. There we go. Database hosts, again, localhost, so that should look familiar. Remember our WordPress at localhost. If this was on a different machine, we might have to put an IP address there. And table prefix, we can leave that as WP_. Go ahead and click submit. And let's see what it says. It says, all right, Sparky, you've made it through this part of the installation. WordPress can now communicate with your database. If you're ready, the time is now. So now we're basically ready to go, and it's going to install the WordPress. It's going to install WordPress for us. Now, you may get some other issues here. Depending on how your site is set up and the permissions on the server, it may tell you it can't create the WordPress configuration file. Let me show you that. So if we go into our WordPress folder here, you'll notice that now there is a WP config. If WordPress can't create that on its own, you might have to come in and manually create this, and it will give you all the code to copy into that file. So just follow the instructions if you ever get that warning. So let's go run the install. And now we have to give us a site title. So we'll go Ciardo test. Username, do not use admin here. Pick something else because admin is the default and intruders know that. So pick something other than admin for your username there. And also pick a better password than I'm doing here. Okay. I'm going to not allow search engines to find this because I don't want it coming up for search results for me. But you'll want to leave that. If this is going to be a real blog, leave that checked. You can always go change it later. So if you're just messing with things, it might be good to uncheck that so you don't have unnecessary things showing up in Google. And now we can go install WordPress. All right. So it looked like our WordPress user, our database user, didn't have the correct permissions. So we need to go adjust that and start that install again. So you'll see here, and this is pretty common, you may see this on your installs, but it's saying WordPress database error. It's not letting us install. That command is denied. So it doesn't have the privileges it needs to install that. So let's jump back into our WordPress database and fix that. So now if we go MySQL user WordPress and super secrets. Whoops. All right, let's use WordPress and let's try to create table test. All right, so let's add some backticks here and see if that fixes our problem. Oh. Okay, so we need to be logged in as root here. So there we go. Whoops. Okay, so I think I've figured out what the issue is. We have access to the WordPress database, but none of its tables. So we actually need to go WordPress dot star like that, and that should give us access to all of the tables. All right, and we can log back in as WordPress to test that out. Okay, That's saying that we're at least getting the proper error here instead of those crazy errors we got before. So that should go ahead and fix the issue we're having. So basically what we did is we granted our table access, or we granted our database access, but not to any tables. So we couldn't actually do anything to the database. So at this point, we should be able to jump back out to our install and give this a quick try again. All right, there we go. As you can see, no more errors, and we're ready to log in. So now we can type our username and the password we just created, and we're good to go. And that is how you create a WordPress blog. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward, although MySQL can be a little hairy to work with, especially in the command line. So give this a try. Review the lesson below this week and see if you can't get a WordPress site up and running on your own domain.